we were at a cafe, a Starbucks cafe that afternoon, and I said, Denver, if you will be my friend, I will not catch and release. And he said, then you have a friend for life. And that was 10 years ago, actually. And so, as life would have it, in his wisdom, he told me a few weeks later that something really bad was getting ready to happen to Debbie. And 2 weeks later, she was diagnosed with cancer.
Oh, dear.
The prognosis for even a long life was not good at all. In fact, most doctors thought she might only live 3 months to a year. But the good news is she did actually live 19 months. But during this 19 months, Denver, the man who had become our friend, and Denver, the man who had wisdom for us and for our city, he lived by a dumpster in the inner city, and he stayed up all night long by that dumpster, and he would pray and talk to God and bring us messages to our home in the morning, like the paper boy delivering the day's news. He would deliver to us a fresh word from God in the morning that he had heard in the night. And Denver was always right. We had the best doctors in the world, and they were not always right, and Denver was never wrong. And during this 19 months, he became a part of our family, and that's really what the story is mostly about, is the extraordinary friendship and the way that he ministered to us, how God took the poorest, most dangerous man in the inner city to minister to a wealthy couple who had many influential friends in the Christian world, but God chose the poorest and most unlikely person to be the one who comforted us and ministered to us. And in the end, when she went to be with the Lord, he came to her the last day, and he said that he had heard from God that she was to lay down her torch for the homeless people, and he was to pick it up and carry it forth.
Wow.
And then when he came out of the room, he told me, he said, don't worry, Ron, nothing ever ends that something new doesn't begin, and God has a plan for us. And Debbie's final words to me were, don't give up on Denver, Ron. God is going to use your friendship in a way you can never imagine. And I guess a couple of days later, he came to her service, and he and he spoke, and he shared her dream, and he shared her vision, and he shared that, in his whole life, and he was 64 years old at that time, and his whole life, she was the first person to ever love him, and that the love, the Christ in her was the hope of glory for him, because no one had ever taken the time to even get to know his name or anything about him. But he was a dangerous and an intimidating person who he didn't really want friends. But Debbie had heard from God that he was to be our friend and to be a part of our lives. And so, that's how God wove the three of us together, me being just the reluctant participant to deliver the message from Debbie's dream to him, and him being a reluctant participant, not wanting any friends, especially white ones, and how God wove it all together. And when he shared her dream, he got a standing ovation at the funeral. And within just a year, more than $5 million came in to build the new mission that she had also dreamed about.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And then a year later, Denver was honored. This was the man who was considered the most dangerous man on the streets and the homeless vagrant for many, many years. He was honored as the Philanthropist of the Year for the city of Fort Worth in a banquet with more than probably 800 people in attendance. The finest citizens of Fort Worth came to honor him as the Philanthropist of the Year for the money that was raised and built for the new homeless shelter in the inner city of Fort Worth.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And then just this past May the 13th, he was honored at the White House with a private luncheon with the First Lady and Barbara Bush and former President Bush. And then we spoke in Washington, D.C. for the Bush Foundation. And in the last year, we've raised millions of dollars and made more than 300 appearances and raised millions of dollars for homeless people all across America. So that's how God used Debbie's dream that our city would be changed, but it ended up not being only our city, but cities all across America are being changed in the way they treat homeless people as a result of Debbie and Denver's story that we tell.
And you're all to be commended for being obedient to the Lord, because he had given Debbie, the dream and the vision, and you were obedient to follow through, and so was Denver. So praise God for obedient servants and letting God work in you and through you. And what advice would you give to those who feel a burden for reaching into the homeless community?
Well, the main advice advice that I can give, and that I know that came from Debbie too, is that God calls us to serve these people and not to judge them. And that's how we finally broke through with Denver, because everybody always wanted to know, why are you so bad? Why do you do all these things? Why are you drunk all the time? Why do you fight? But Debbie never did anything. She just looked at him one day and she said, God has a calling on your life, and you're going to live to see it. And he had told her, he said, ma'am, you better leave me alone. I'm a bad man, and you don't know who you're messing with. And she said, I don't believe a word of it. God has a calling on your life. You're going to live to see it. And so you never know whose eyes God is watching you through. And, the people that, the only thing that can make a difference in these people is to love them and to not give up on them, not to catch and release, because, it took me several years of friendship with Denver to finally trust him, for him to trust me, and for him then to see a total transformation in his life, which today he's living a totally victorious life and being a very productive citizen, a New York Times best-selling author, an artist now that has sold over 200 paintings in the last year, done over 200 personal speaking engagements that he's done as well. So when you think that God can take trash and turn it into treasure, it's an amazing, amazing story.
Thank you for sharing that amazing story here on God at Work. Thank you. I've been talking with Ron Hall, and you've been listening to God at Work on WMPQ The Light 95.9.